All righty. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, The Power of an All-in-One DMS, Connecting Your Dealership to Succeed. So just a few housekeeping items before we get started. This webinar is being recorded and will be shared afterward for your viewing pleasure. If you have any questions during the webinar, I encourage you to use the Q&A panel below in your Zoom toolbar. I will be monitoring that chat closely and posing the questions to our speakers at the end of the demo portion. So let's get into it. My name is Lizzie Painter. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Motility.
My name's Tim. I'm one of the regional sales managers here.
And my name is Griffin. I'm the lead professional services consultant here at Motility Software.
All right. Well, thank you, Lizzie, for the introduction. We'll go ahead and get things started. If you've ever tried to help a customer without all the tools you need at your fingertips, you certainly know how it can cause some unnecessary frustration and inefficiency within your team over time, not to mention the potential risk of losing customer interest while you search for what you need. What's worse is we found 3 common problems that we see dealers facing every day when they don't have a DMS or they have multiple systems that are not necessarily working for them. So first on that list is what we see all the time, and that's a bad setup, which can lead to worse conversions. So when you don't have a single process for the dealership, it can create a lot more complexity for your team and customers. Everyone working independently means there's no cohesive vision in what they're trying to do. And that can cause problems both for your team internally, but it also can cause a lot of problems with your customer service, especially when you have things like multiple records for the same customer. You don't know when different departments are all reaching out to that customer, and it can create a frustrating customer experience for your potential customers or your current customers, making them not want to come back in the future, which could, of course, create a loss of sales. Now, Griffin, I know you've worked with a lot of dealers over the years. I'd love any sort of feedback, things that you've seen, because you've worked on the implementation side of things to see and help correct a lot of this bad setup and conversion that you've seen.
Thank you, Tim. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's these lack of procedures or standardization of procedures that leads to just overall a tougher experience within the dealership that then translates to poor customer satisfaction. Frequently, whether it is multiple systems or multiple softwares, trying to tether all those into one can be very difficult, and you can't blame dealerships for not having a good, procedure list to follow when every employee is using a different system or software, and there's just a lot of confusion. So all of that confusion, I think, leads, like you said, to either a loss of sale or just poor customer experience.
Well, thank you. The second one that we really see a lot is the lack of visibility across the entire dealership. Now, this can be really frustrating for every department, but a big one that we see it is with the general managers or the ownership. If you have multiple systems all giving you reports in different feeds from different providers in different formats, that can be incredibly frustrating to look through to find out where you can improve on what you're doing on a day-to-day. I mean, for example, accounting can't really go back and view transactions if they're manually putting them in QuickBooks. They'll have to go track down the person that put the transaction in, or they'll have to go through multiple systems to audit and investigate, and that can just make everyone's day worse. Service can't see what parts they need or what the inventory on the parts is without going to track down the parts people. And of course, sales can't see what communication's been had with any of their customers, which again creates that poor customer experience. And at the end of the day, you want those customers for life. So not being able to see what's going on can really affect your operational standpoint, but it can really affect what's going on with your sales team to create more sales. And again, Griffin, I'm going to default to you here because this is something I know you've worked with a lot. So what expertise or what have you seen in that lack of visibility? Oh, did we lose Griffin?
Nope, I'm here. Sorry about that. Yeah, you're absolutely correct in the loss of visibility there. It's whether it's from between service and parts, service and delivery, or the sales department, or from sales to all the way back to parts. All of these items are cohesive and need to, know what the other side is doing, so any of those delays experienced in any one of those departments really ends up just leading to a longer delivery process, right? A longer pickup process. So now you have customers who have already been waiting. It's been quite a hectic year, busy sales year. So deliveries are needing to be faster, QC'd correctly in a timely fashion. So all of these efficiencies and needing of time without being able to see what your colleagues are doing just across the dealership is definitely going to be one of the largest places to lose that time efficiency. So I definitely think that, unifying that system into one, giving everyone access to, visualize and see the same data, same reports, same dashboards is going to overall lead to just better efficiencies.
And that really leads us into the third problem that we see is without the visibility, with those bad setups, you get a lot of loss in both the data that's being input in there, with the productivity of your team. We've seen people just outright lose materials or lose inventory and parts because there's just that lack of communication. And a lot of it, again, we talked about the loss of data. If you put things on a sticky note, I can't tell you how many dealers I've worked with that are still on pen and paper, and they put something in a slot, it gets blown away or things like that, and then you lose all of that data. And not having that kind of backup, not having that set up for your team where there's those checks and balances can really affect you in that way. And of course, that affects the productivity. You hit the nail on the head earlier when you talked about how we've had some of the busiest summers, or we've had the busiest summer I think the RV industry has ever had. And with that, the productivity needs to be where it can be manageable. It needs to be something that really is an efficient, well-oiled machine, because you don't want to lose out on those sales that we talked about before. And with those materials being lost as well, I can't tell you how many times I've talked to dealers where they've had our service guys just run over, grab the part they need and go back. But now that whole parts inventory is off. And even better, if they leave a sticky note or they have to call or they have to walk down to the parts department to get those things, it's going to cut into that time that it's taking for them to finish the repair. So Griffin, this is something you've worked with so many dealers on this aspect, especially trying to make sure that there's no loss of data, that the productivity is there. And I know you've done a lot of inventories with people. So talk to us about what you've seen.
Yeah, a lot of times from the operational standpoint, plugging holes in the ship, the parts department is usually the one that gets blamed, right? There's a lot of moving pieces day in and day out. You've got a lot of different departments all requesting parts, like you said, robbing parts from a different vehicle because they don't have the one there that needs to be ordered, and there's no turnaround time quick enough to get that, so the customer can get delivered. So a lot of shortcuts end up being taken, on the parts side of things. And when you don't have an integrated system where everyone can see that, a sticky note is only as good as the moment that you wrote it down. Now it's out of date. And we find a lot of dealerships using whatever their current part system is more of as a journal or as a diary, right? They're coming back at the end of the day and recording everything, and it's not real time. So you don't have real time visibility into the items being received into inventory, what has been ordered, what hasn't, and you end up with a lot of duplication errors, like reordered parts when you've got one sitting on the shelf. If I don't have visibility into my part system to know, hey, we have a slightly different UPC code, but this part is a substitute or an accessory for another, now we've just doubled up and purchased a part that we already have back in the warehouse just because we didn't have a good way of researching or finding it. So, the accessibility to a system that gives that to everybody, I think, is pretty huge there.
So really what we're talking about here is having an all-in-one DMS that works with every single department, that has that real-time visibility into everything that's going on. So it's not that journal process at the end of the day, or it's not taking away the productivity to go and write it down a second time. Duplicate entry is the enemy in this situation. And this is one of those times where just having it all updated, having it all working together, having every department can create the better operational, or everything better from the operational standpoint, which again affects the customer base. So, and when we talk about the next section, we're going to talk about how it can affect each department and each person in the dealership, and how really having a single DMS or one system communicating with the other departments is really going to be the best way to get the job done. So when it comes to the ownership and GM, the biggest thing that we want to do is give that owner or that GM insight into everything that's going on at the dealership, so he can make sure that everything is operating the way it should be and not necessarily going the way that it used to be. So when it comes to this, I mean, again, the whole point is to reduce costs, make things more efficient, make more money. That's the owner and GM's job. And so having the ability to look down and see what the sales have done on a dashboard, or where things are getting hung up in the sales process, or how many leads are coming in that are getting contacted, or what the time is to get contacted, it can really help make that process a lot more granular, and it can really show a lot more insight into what you can do the next season to get better. I've worked with a lot of owners and GMs on this aspect, and we really want to make sure that they have one system that they can look at, so they have that insight right away. It's not something that they have to go and rely on the management team to come back to them with the answers, because if everyone has a different process, again, we saw how that can lead to conversions earlier. So, yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of things that you can do to make things better, but having that overall view of everything that's going on will certainly help out.
Well, I think too, in the beginning, Tim, you really mentioned that, GMs and owners, their main purpose is to review the operation standpoint of the business, to review the financials, and to find, where are we losing money? Where are we making our most money? Which items should we not focus on and redirect our efforts elsewhere? And many times you'll find that depending upon the type of system, a dealership is utilizing, or if it's pen and paper, the owner or GM is spending more time researching and finding out these things. They're not actually spending the time looking at it from a macro view and discussing how do we fix these items. Going from deal to deal, from salesperson to salesperson is not an efficient way to figure out what's wrong in your sales process. But using our dashboards or some of the reporting available, you find that if the owner or GM is using the system, and maybe not the full capacity, but they're using the reporting and getting the data out that they need, that's what we want, as opposed to an owner or GM who is somewhat distanced from the day-to-day because they don't have a good operating system to find this data easily, right? They need to be able to both do that and make decisions based off of their financials. They don't need to be becoming a pseudo sales manager or a service manager by having to research these items at a granular level. So just getting them to use the system, I think, is much easier to do when it's an all-in-one DMS.
Speaking of sales managers, the sales team is one that will definitely benefit from having an all-in-one DMS, especially one that is really CRM focused. So having that customer be the heart of what you do every day is really what, with the dealerships I've experienced, the way to go. So, I mean, you want your customers to come back to you. You want to build that relationship so they become the customers for life, and not necessarily just, I mean, we can all agree that once a unit leaves the door, that's not the end of that customer life cycle. And so having something that allows you to manage that pipeline from the first time they come in through the website all the way through to 6 months later when they need to come in for winterization or they need to have things done, having that sales process and being able to see everything that's happened in that time will really help with building that relationship and closing more deals, because a deal isn't just one that comes in when you purchase a new unit. It's something that you can get them coming back in for for service. You can get them coming back in for parts or accessories. And then when the time comes in the future, upsell them on a new vehicle. So giving your team the ability to have automated callback alerts or viewing all communication that the customers had between all departments really makes that process of building that relationship so much easier.
I can agree to that. And I would definitely, whenever I visited dealerships, that you're absolutely right in that, just because they're getting the delivery today, they're going to follow up with that customer a month after, 6 months after, a year after, and hopes that, and I've heard this, variously over the years, that the average turnaround life cycle of a trailer could be, less than 2 years. So if you've sold a customer this year, there's a likelihood that they will continue purchasing from you year over year as they find new needs to meet their camping lifestyle, or just general upgrades that they like to find. So, that sale does not end at that first delivery. It's really just the beginning. And having a tool that both reminds you, the salesperson or the sales manager, what prospects have been sold, how long ago they were sold, and even sending some of these items automatically through our CRM pipeline, your customer base will get notifications to remind them that their extended warranty is expiring, or that it's been 2 years since their delivery. And, we want to make sure that everything's going well. So all of these constant, contact points are going to create that second sale, that third sale. And as Tim mentioned, you're making a customer for life as opposed to a single unit purchase. Oh, Tim, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened. The audio just dropped. But so when it comes to the parts department, I mean, we've seen this being one of the biggest points of progress when it comes to creating an all-in-one DMS. So when it comes to the parts, we hit on it earlier when we talked about the service and how the communication between parts and service needs to be done. But it's not just the communication within the departments. That parts team needs to have that communication with the suppliers, with the accounting team, with everybody, making sure that everything is accurate on this side, because this is where we could see some of the biggest losses in the dealership. So being able to electronically communicate with major part vendors for availability, so you can track, okay, where is this, which warehouse is this in, how long is it going to take for me to get there, and then be able to use that customer database that we talked about earlier to send the information out to your customers. If you're special ordering a part for a customer, you want to let them know when it comes in, or you want to let them know when that part's been ordered, and then have a sales or parts person follow up with that customer to let them know what's going on. Keeping that communication is great, but then also being able to go in and see, okay, which service repair order is this for, or what parts do my service team need? Is there a way that I can track all of that? That's all going to really help in having that one singular DMS. And like I said, having the availability to import price books and keep those prices up to date, make sure there's no losses there either.
Tim, I can tell you all the times I've visited a dealership and visited, a call center or a call department where they're fielding calls. And many times, whether it's the sales department or a receptionist, they're getting calls about when can I pick up my unit? When will my RV be ready? And very many times the only hang up is a parts order. Whether it's a warranty part that was delayed, maybe the wrong part was ordered because the information was incorrect on the work order. Many times that information needs to be available to more than just the parts department. So having some of that visibility in the CRM, in the service module, where even a receptionist could jump in, take a quick peek, see the tracking number, check it, and see, hey, according to the last USPS tracking number, this item should be here on Friday, so you should be good to come by and pick up, assuming no delays. Just having that little piece of information can prevent a heat case from happening on the sales side, because now you're not just telling them, oh, we don't know what's going on with this part, we have no idea, when in reality, anyone at the dealership involved with that sale should be able to answer that question. And having a DMS that gives you that visibility will allow them to do so.
So when it comes to the service side of things, we've been seeing more and more the influx of mobile repair services. So going out to the campsite, being able to start that repair, putting in the complaint, cause correction, getting everything ready to go so you can cash it out later has really been helpful. But it's not just when you go off site to do the mobile repairs. Sometimes it just makes the customer experience so much better when you can walk out there with them with a tablet or with your phone, put in that information and walk them through everything that needs to be done, taking pictures along the way, assigning the mechanics for the job, and really streamlining that process so that way your customer doesn't have to sit there in a waiting room while you go back and manually type in all your handwritten notes. So we've seen people get very excited over the fact that you can attach images to repair orders that then your parts team can go look up to know exactly what part is needed. We've seen being able to track special orders all through your single repair order. And when it comes to warranty work, having that single DMS that communicates back and forth with accounting is certainly key.
You know, I always get good feedback, Tim, anytime I'm on site visiting with the techs and, you know, getting feedback on how their experience has changed from, you know, whether they're using a system where they need to jump out of the trailer or the RV, their unit they're working on, walk over to a terminal, punch in their information, clock in, clock out. You know, that's a bit of a process, always walking to that terminal. Maybe there's only 2 terminals in the shop and 10 technicians, and you have to wait until one terminal is available to work from. So a lot of times giving these techs the flexibility to do everything they would normally be doing, whether it's punching in, making parts requests, checking what time they flagged, or like you mentioned, the photos, you know, it's just all in one. So now you have one tool where all of these things can be done, and it can be done from their pocket. They can pull their phone or their tablet up while in the middle of the coach, make their parts request, you know, flag times, mark it as on hold, go on break. All of these options are available to them. And, you know, those seconds add up to minutes and then hours over the course of the year, leading to better efficiencies for the technicians, especially for those that are flat rate. Now they're making more and probably spending you less for the amount of time they're getting these trailers in and out of the shop efficiently. So I think a lot of good reception there, being able to work remotely from these devices has really opened up and, you know, made their lives a bit easier, because now they can focus on what they do best, turning wrenches and getting these units fixed, rather than fiddling with a desktop or you know, an operating system they might not be super familiar with.
So you heard me talking about it earlier when it comes to the double entry. F&I departments, the more I've talked to them, the more I've found that they are the biggest culprits of having to put things into systems or different forms 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times, which is really a pain in the butt when you have the customer there and you're sitting there trying to talk to them about what's going on. You need them to sign multiple forms, but then before you do anything like that, you have to put their information in, their address, the unit information, all of the selling info. When you have a full DMS, you have that ability to pull the customer information over from the CRM. So all of the information that you have from the CRM can then populate that deal. All of the taxes based on where they live can then be populated in that. All the deal or all the paperwork based on what type of unit they're looking for can populate that deal. And all of that unit information can all come over from unit inventory. So when you have that communication between all of the different modules, it's going to make that process for your F&I team a lot better. And as someone who just sat in a dealership for a very long time trying to get through this process, I wish they had one of these systems, because from a customer side of things, it's just the worst. So having something that can do all of that information and get you in and out of the dealership makes that customer experience so much better. And also, when it comes to a DMS, you really want to make sure not only does it communicate within itself, but it also communicates well with the other third-party integrations that you're using, like App One or like 700 Credit, where you can use that information that's already in the system to populate the information that you need on that side of things too. So having something that can push out the information to App One and then pull it back in later on really makes that process simple. And being able to run a credit check on the customer within the CRM or within the system, so you can see if they're just trying to impress their girlfriend or if this is something that they're actually interested in, really keeps that process moving.
I agree to all that, Tim. I think really it's the double entry that you mentioned there that just becomes a pain for the finance managers. They hate it.
Speaking of double entry again, the accounting team. The accounting team, this is one where the more I talk to them, the more I find out that they are really focusing a lot more on going back and auditing all of the things that they're doing on a day-to-day basis. So if you have people handwriting deals, you have people that are putting in ROs into a different system, then you have to go back and check all of that information. It's not something that's automated. It's not something that's set up. It's something that you have to go back and review to make sure that it's the right information. And that can be a real pain in the butt when you don't have the ability to drill down. You don't have the ability to go in and see the history of who did what on that deal or on that transaction. And accounting can really, instead of having to go through that process of tracking everything down, they can really just go back and look at it from an easy standpoint with some great default setup and everything ready to go. I mean, you can even check your AP information. You know it's going to be accurate because of that communication we talked about with the parts department. So you have to pay a major provider. You're going to see everything that's ready to go with that provider because it's all been done through the system. And it's not something you have to go back and look at again.
And I'll speak to what you mentioned about the auditing kind of responsibility. You know, I've many times shown up at a dealership and there's a kind of a divide with a line drawn in the sand where accounting and, you know, the front end of the shop are kind of at you know, war with each other. You know, it's constantly accounting having to go back through and correct mistakes made. You know, which really means the front end of the shop is either moving too quickly or, like you said, they don't have a cohesive system. So now any sort of mistake or incorrect data plugged in, like a wrong VIN, now we have to go back and, you know, audit every transaction associated with that unit. So their jobs are less, you know, I'm not an AP writer, I'm not an accounts receivable or a warranty clerk. They end up becoming in-house auditors, and really they end up doing the job twice. What the front end of the shop could have done once had they had a unified system or maybe slowed things down a little bit and paid attention to their entry. So definitely seen that a lot.
And when we talked about warranty just now, I mean, that's where I've also seen a lot of good things coming out of a single DMS is when you have that warranty work, being able to go back and see the pictures or find the pictures that the warranty company needs from the repair order, just by drilling down or looking at that in your warranty credit section just makes all the difference. So that way it's a lot less work on the accounting side. So we've talked about an all-in-one DMS, and we've talked about why you should need one. And there are a lot of choices out there, but what makes Motility unique is not just our years of experience that we have in the industry, but it's the way that we build the software. It's the way that we take the dealership input and really build it for their usage. I tell this to customers all the time, but it's a good software system, something that you're going to get the adoption from your team, is not a software where somebody says, here's the software, your team now has to learn how to use it, we will train you. It's more of a consultative approach. So when we do the implementation, it's much less of a, here's our software. It's more of a, tell us how you do this now or how you want to do this, and we'll show you how that's done in our software, which creates a much more tailored experience to where basically no one dealership is using it the exact same. Because we have the number of users that we have, because we have the number of rooftops that we service, we've been able to create that software based on the feedback that we get. And we get that feedback either directly through the account managers or the customer service department, or we get it through our ideas board that's on our website, where a dealer can put an idea that they want to see implemented in the next iteration, and then it can be upvoted by other dealers. And that best thing about this software too is it's not something that you're going to have to pay an arm and a leg for. It's something that, compared to competitors, we have a much lower upfront cost. We can get you live in 4 to 6 weeks instead of 4 to 6 months. There's just a lot of benefits to working with Motility because it's meant for those different size dealerships, because it's meant and tailored around your dealership. It's not something that is really going to be a one size fits all. It's going to be something that's more grounded around what you guys want to do. So you guys are probably sick of hearing me talk, so I'd love to have Griffin show you some examples of how that integration all works together and how that can all work. And you can see that customer experience from the first time a lead comes in all the way through a deal through parts and service.
Excellent, Tim. Well, thank you, sir. I'll go ahead and start my screen share. Let me know if you can see everything okay.
Looks good from my side.
Excellent. Thank you. So we've done a lot of talking. Why don't we show a little bit about what these processes might look like? just so you can see how a fully integrated DMS and how the modules communicate together can be a pretty smooth and simple process. So I'm going to kind of put my salesperson hat on for the moment, and let's take a look at our web application. So what you're seeing is Motility's current web app. This is a tool designed primarily for your mobile employees, so technicians, salespersons, maybe parts runners. This is all the data you're seeing here is mirrored in our desktop version of our software. But again, this is scalable, so it works with your phone, your tablet, any device that you would like to, walk the lot but continue doing your day-to-day. So what you're noticing, probably similarly to your current phone or whatever device you have, is these notification flags, which are a great way for the system to kind of bring to your attention new data or new info. And in this case, as a salesperson, I've got a lot to do today, so why don't we get started? Our new contacts is generally showing us any leads or prospects that have been generated maybe automatically by our website. Many dealerships have contact forms, having a customer or prospect put in their information, what they're interested in, and submit so that they can get a follow-up and hopefully an appointment scheduled to view a unit, hopefully same day. So what we have here is a couple leads that were auto-generated to me as a salesperson, probably from our website, or maybe they were assigned to me from my sales manager. However that got done, I would begin working these leads by simply pulling up their contact record and starting from here. As Tim has mentioned earlier, this one customer record is going to be the same as this customer moves from prospecting into a quote or deal. As they move into service, as the transactions get posted to accounting, they will all be tied to this entity record. So whether I'm using some prospecting information like what they're interested in, how they reached out to us on our website, I can set, looking at their price ranges to kind of help them settle in what they're interested in. Let's see what Mr. Griffin here, Mr. James Griffin, he also put in some info on on our website, like his trade. He has a Ford F-150 that he's interested in trading in. He's put in a unit preference for what he does want to purchase. There was a Palomino Puma that he must have found on our website and inquired about. So why don't we go ahead and go get a quote started for him? But why don't we give him a call first and make sure that he's comfortable coming in maybe later this afternoon. So any contact we like to keep in our system and log, right? We've talked about giving that visibility across the whole dealership. So why don't I go ahead and add in a comment? So as Tim, the salesperson, I'll go ahead and say, make a quick note, put in whatever comments I want, if I have any pre-populated information. But long story short, all I'm trying to do here is notate what happened on my phone call. Maybe I didn't get a hold of him, so I went ahead and left him a voicemail. We'll save it, but I'll set a follow-up contact date for the 28th to make sure that we do get something scheduled and get him in. So you continue that process with the rest of your contacts. Maybe real quick, as you make notes on entity records, you can mark them as contacted, remove them from your new contacts, because now that you have made that initial point of contact, now they're an open lead ready to continue working. And I would continue that work until my new contacts list is depleted, because now every prospect that inquired about something has made contact with me, and hopefully we will follow up with a sale soon. So now with that in mind, I'm going to continue my example of James Griffin here, and why don't we go ahead and start a quote for him on the desktop version of the software. So I'll actually do that by opening up our CRM. So as we've talked about, this CRM database is the heart of our system. So one customer record will take care of it for us. So I've set callback dates for my leads. Let me log back in here as Tim, just so I have the right info. As you can see, it's pretty easy to jump between logins if you are working or jumping onto someone else's computer for a moment. So now I've set callback dates, and James Griffin here is in my list to follow up with. We didn't have we couldn't get a hold of him, but we'll follow up with him here on the 28th. But like taking a look at his preferences here, like we talked about, his Palomino Puma is in stock. This is something that we do currently have. I could match this preference to maybe a different one had this one not been in stock and been marked as sold, but this vehicle is actually available to him. Maybe I'll check my memo notes, make sure that I've got all of my, ducks in a row before I give him a call. But Why don't I go ahead and prepare a quote for him so that when we do talk with him, he can show up to the dealership and already have a printed quote sheet of the unit he's interested in, possibly some upgrades that we can offer him. So to do that, I will go over to the lead info tab and go ahead and start a new quote. So while this is launching, we can discuss, this system is designed by permissions so that you can control each user and what they have access to do and what they cannot do. Some dealerships I've visited will allow their sales team to take a quote, even turn it into a deal before it ends up in the finance manager's hands. Or maybe certain dealerships, they don't allow them to start quotes. The salesperson will bring all the information to a desking manager. They'll go ahead and generate the quote and continue the process from there. But again, the system is flexible, like Tim said. We will, tailor the system's permissions and the security groups to your liking. So we operate the system as you do day to day, not the other way around. We're not going to force you to any strict, regimen that the system requires. So now I've got a preset here. This will preload all of our fees, maybe some taxes. And again, we always want to automate as much information in the system as possible. So as I start this quote, you can see that it's automatically adding his preference, which is the unit he's interested in, a trade, the co-buyer assigned to James Griffin's record. That might have come in from the contact form on our website, and then Tim as our sales person on the deal. So we're going to go ahead and start this. Going to add our pricing information to the quote. And now let's review. So we've got James Griffin, the Palomino Puma he's interested in. Some of the information on the deal has pre-filled based on our default Bank of the West that we finance with, maybe some other options. Here's his trade-in allowance ACV info that was coming over from his trade. But take a look at all the colors that are happening. These are notifications, just like before. What's better than pen and paper is the ability to kind of departmentalize the issues or items you need to review. So for example, let's check our taxes tab, make sure everything is accurate there before moving on. Let's check our units tab. Why is that in red? Potentially this VIN is possibly failing the VIN decoder verification check. It's probably likely I made this VIN up. So, that's another thing you can attend to. Why is the service tab open? It looks like we have some open prep and delivery work for this unit, maybe from a previous potential sale. If that did not happen, we can cancel those, but all of that visibility is available within the deal. So again, all of this information is preloaded. Really, at this point, I could go to our print doc screen and generate a quote for Mr. Griffin when he does, return my phone call and potentially come in and visit. But here's some of the other functionalities, whether we're pushing to App One, our integrated partner for finding lenders or menu selling, or American Guardian for the warranty services products that can potentially be constructed on their side. Both of these integrations are available so that you key in the information one time in the deal we have pulled up, and this deal will feed all of that information to those other systems. So now, again, even if you do need to utilize these third-party integrations to complete your finance documents, it's all one record. So get your deal in right here. Let's say I submit all this information to App One and we make a change on their portion of the software. Well, we can pull those changes back in just like this American Guardian pull-in button. So if we changed the lender here or possibly some information about the unit, all of that can come back and re-update our deal. So one run record, no need to continue rekeying the same information over and over. Why don't we go ahead and take this, before I print my quote out for Mr. Griffin, I'd like to maybe show him some of the installed options that he either wrote in about on the website form, or we just know that this is a typical upgrade. So I'll add this fifth wheel hitch install as a typical upgrade and go ahead and start this ticket directly from here. I can actually create service documents for my service team. However, I can't do so without this quote being turned into a deal. And turning a quote into a deal does a number of things. It puts the unit on hold. It can prevent other users from putting deposits down on that unit as we already have an active deal for it. So watch what happens when we do click that deal number box. That's all it did. It generated our deal number. So now we both have a quote number and a deal number for it. It's that easy. It's not a separate document type. It's very simple to do so. I did get an on-hold message, but because there were no deposits placed against this unit, it went ahead and let me add it. So now I could start my service work order. And how do I do that? Click Start Service RO. I'm not going to add these items to an existing RO. We're going to create a brand new one. So now, if you didn't have any sort of unified DMS or system, many times you're going to have your sales manager or your desking manager either somehow call or run over to the shop, let them know, hey, this unit's scheduled to deliver at the end of the day, potentially on the 27th. Obviously, we can push those dates forward once Mr. Griffin does agree and sign this contract. But assuming all these things are taking place, now I don't even need to notate the service department. And the reason why is, let's jump over to the service module. You can do so either from hitting Program, Parts, and Service. Otherwise, I have it pulled up over here. But now what's happening is the system will automatically add for you a work order in this prep and delivery status. And you can see it up here at the very top. So already my service or my prep and delivery service manager doesn't even need indication from the sales team that the unit is ready to deliver on a certain date. We've got the date of delivery as the promised date. I can notate that these are all prep for delivery tickets, so these are presumably all needing to get ready for delivery. Meanwhile, we've got our other retail invoices and other document types based on their status. So really easily, without even an email notification, if your service department's just reviewing and they're watching for these work orders, or they can even put in a status filter here of prep for delivery, it's very easy to see what is outstanding and how to prioritize based on promise date. So we're going to take the ticket that we just created. Just want to show you a couple of other functionalities that can tie in the other departments. So for example, we've got a fifth wheel hitch and the brake controller. All of these items were automatically created from our sales ticket, right? We've got automatic billing and payable amounts. We've got our parts in the quantities necessary. Looks like some parts might not have the quantities, so we do need to go ahead and get some orders done. But as I notice, our flexible hose is here. We have an amount in stock. So what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and make a parts request, because as a service writer, maybe the warehouse is across the street and I don't want to have to walk over there, grab the part. We've got dedicated personnel for that. So why don't I make a parts request? And I can do so by going to the parts request tab and populating that information. Parts request for part number 123 flexible hose. And then maybe if I wanted to, I could even take pictures of this item and then attach those to the work order. So now I can say, please see photos, so that when my team does go back to the warehouse and grab this part, they grab the right one. They don't just, assume the sticker label is right, because you never know. So taking those photos can be an extra set of potential help there. From this point, I'll go ahead and mark this or leave it as not fulfilled. I can put the part number in here, maybe request which part department it's coming from. But at the end of the day, that's probably all we really need. Because now what we're going to see is if you have a dedicated parts employee, they will be utilizing this parts request screen. So again, without any verbal or need for an email or a phone call or a Post-it note, my parts department just simply watches this screen. And sorted by request date, you can see up here at the very top, here is our parts request for part number 123. Please see the photos. And as a parts runner, I'm going to go ahead and open that ticket up. I can find all of the available photos within a work order by hitting view images. They will be there forever, and they were always dedicated to this invoice. So, you'll never lose any of that history. But they'll check the photos, make sure that they're getting the right part. They'll run back to the warehouse, grab it, and then they'll bring this item out to the tech or the service writer, so that when the service writer assigns his technician, they can go ahead and get that work started. They'll go ahead and mark the parts request as fulfilled. The part or the technician now has their part. We can go ahead and move forward with this delivery or prep for delivery ticket. So just wanting to show a couple of the capabilities where many times in those processes where service needs a prep for delivery ticket created, or service needs a part and that part needs to be installed before that unit can get delivered, all of these items occurred without really any need for notification, because if you have the staff looking for the right pieces of info, all of it's readily available real time. There's no need to send an email. There's no need to make a phone call. There's no need to walk across the dealership. All of this is at everyone's hands and fingertips, and everyone should be able to, sales should be able to know real quickly why we weren't be able to get this delivered on time, maybe because the parts request wasn't fulfilled or something of that nature. So just showing that a lot of this automation can take a lot of stress off of the communication of your staff. They just simply use the DMS system as a tool where all of that information is stored. But again, I've shown a lot of this. Tim has talked about this a lot. Perhaps you've heard enough from us. Perhaps, why don't you get some dealer feedback on some of their successes in using the software, and of course, just see how this has changed dealerships for the better. So I'll go ahead and stop my share. Thank you.
Thank you, Griffin. So like we talked about before, the software that we built is 100% built from the ground up with the dealers' feedback and the dealers' day-to-day in mind when we build it. So every iteration that we come out, we take that new feedback and we put it into practice. So this is Lane Bell. I'm going to let you read the code. I'm not going to read it out loud to you, but she verifies that, and she just wants everyone to know that this is what we do. And so our system is different because we build it for you. Are there any questions that you guys have for us?
Thanks so much, Tim and Griffin. So we do have just a few questions. I think this is a perfect time to let everyone know that if you do have any questions about the demo or about the presentation, feel free to post those in the Q&A, and we will go ahead and go over those. And so our first question actually is around integration. So, you guys did touch on integrations specifically. So I was hoping that you could expand on that slightly, and what partners do we integrate with? And then also, can you elaborate specifically on the third-party CRM integrations and if there is any?
So when it comes to motility, we've really opened up our API. We've opened it up so that way we can read and write to other software. Griffin pointed out on the demo that one of the big ones is through App One. So we can not only push that information out to App One, anytime you make any sort of adjustments, it can pull that information back into our system. So when it comes to integrations, we are always looking for new partnerships, and we're looking to get set up with those new partnerships. So if you guys have anything that you need in particular, one of the things that we do is during that implementation time, we will look into that for you. We will try to get those set up and see if that's something that we can do.
Awesome. We've also gotten a question around innovation, and can you share just some of the recent innovations that Motility has done within maybe the last 6 to 12 months?
Absolutely. So we talked about the fact that we take the dealership feedback, we put it into our different iterations of our software, but one of the big ones that we've really released within the past year is Motility Pay. And we can do a full demo on that if you guys are interested, but what it is it's a great way to pay any sort of dealers or vendors that you guys are working with. Anything that you guys need to pay out, we can actually do on your behalf to make that process even easier. So that's one of the big things that we saw the requests of how do we make the AP process even better. And with that, we created Motility Pay. And again, there's a whole demo that we can do on that alone, but it's certainly something that we've done to the request of our dealers and to positive feedback from our dealers as well.
Awesome. Well, it looks like that's actually the only 2 questions that we have so far. So if you guys do have any more questions, we are open and ready to answer them. We'll leave the Q&A open just for a few minutes. And while we wait for a few of those to pile in, just wanted to make sure that I mentioned that if you do have any questions or you would like to, do a deeper dive specifically with Tim and Griffin, I added his information up on the screen. I will also post that in the chat for you guys. So feel free to grab that link and schedule some time directly with Tim, and we can answer those questions more one-on-one if now is not the time for you to have those questions answered. And we'll just give you guys a minute or 2 on the questions, and if not, we can let you guys have a few minutes back in your day. Tim, we did get one more question around Motility Anywhere and wanting to know how close that is to prime time.
Yeah, no problem. So Motility Anywhere is still set to launch in Q4, but right now our system is cloud-based, so you wouldn't need any sort of servers or anything hosted on premises. We handle all the hosting for you now.
All right. Well, it does look like that was the last question and we aren't really getting any more. So we can go ahead and conclude today's webinar. Like I mentioned, if you do have any questions, feel free to grab the Calendly link here, schedule time directly on Tim's calendar. Can't wait to talk to you further. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Thank you all for your time.
Thanks, everybody. And thank you, Lizzie, for all your help.
Absolutely. Have a good day, guys.